Okay, it's recording.
Hello, this is Brian Williamson, a Client Services Administrator with PSI Education. I'm here with Robert and a few of his faculty members, Todd and Randall from Calvin College. Today, I'll be giving them a walkthrough of the admin site. So the first setting I want to cover with you all, this is just our internal org, just for notice, is the Administrator tab. So obviously, only administrators, there's two roles, admin and exam sponsors, so only the admins will be able to see this tab and use it. So if you needed to bulk import users, which I don't think is the case here, if you had 100 people you needed to add, we have a template here and it goes to Excel and you could fill it out and just upload it. If you ever had a situation where you needed to add a large quantity of exam sponsors or admins, you can do that. For just adding one or two people, you go to the administrator and user management. Just takes a second here. I appreciate your patience. You entered up finally, just as I say that. So these are just our internal reps. So if you ever had to add a new user, you'll just go to this button right here that says Add New User. You'll select our role, exam sponsor admin. There's an option for student, but we advise that you just don't use that. So if you want somebody to be able to access everything, all the exam sponsors, all the exams and the records, you'd make them an admin. If you want them to only be able to access their exams and see records from exams that they registered, you would do an exam sponsor. So you'll just fill out their name, first and last, username, and you'll give them a password. There's just typical requirements that needs to be 8 characters long, needs to have a capital letter and a special character, typical security measures. And then you'll just type in the email. And I'll just, this for example, so just make like an alias for myself. And I'll just deactivate this account later, so. And you would go through all the settings, first name, last name, username, password. Perfect. And then you'll just go to user management. And you'll be able to clearly see that that account was created in 1 second. Yep, so you can clearly see Brian Williams. My name is Brian Williams' son with an I and O-N, so I just made a little alias right there. So that pretty much is the distinction between administrator and exam sponsor. So moving on to exam registration. But before I do, did any one of you had any questions regarding the administrator tab?
I think so, but just to be clear, that's for setting up somebody to be an instructor, somebody who can set up tests.
Yes, so the thing is only an administrator can add an account, but once you add the account, once you make somebody an exam sponsor, they can register as many exams as they want for their particular course. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Perfect. So great. So once the exam sponsor, once they have access and the credentials are sent over, what you'll do is that you'll have them create an exam in your LMS, which is Moodle. And so what they'll do from here is that they'll register it with the admin site. They'll go to exam registration and register an exam. So as you can see, the organization is defaulted. This is just our internal one. So as an administrator, one thing to note, if it's an exam sponsor, they'll only be able to register exams under their own name. If it's an administrator, they will get the pick. So if the exam sponsor was, let's just say Todd, this will be locked on his name. He'll only be able to register exams under his own name. And administrators can register exams under any exam sponsor they want that's on their roster. So getting down to actually registering the exam, all you'll do really is just emulate the settings that you have when you created the exam in Moodle. So for example, we'll just go final exam 100, just an example. Now, technically, the exam name portion isn't case sensitive, but we highly recommend that you copy the same name that you named the exam in Moodle and just copy it here just for convenience sake, just so the students, they won't get confused. So just, I highly recommend you use the same name that you use when you create the exam. The password is a bit of a different story. The password absolutely is case sensitive. So it needs to be exactly what you use when you created it in Moodle. So we'll just go. I have a Aquafina bottle in front of me. Let's just put that in. So Aquafina, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So this is replicating the exam password that was set up in Moodle, correct?
Yes, correct. It needs to be absolutely exact. And a few things to note about the password is that the password cannot obtain any special characters. It has to be alphanumeric, either uppercase and lowercase letters and a sequence of numbers. And you can see this little notice right here. Do not provide the password to the students. And the reason why we ask of this is because if students know the password, they'll be able to go inside Moodle and they'll just be able to type in the password and access the exam, which defeats the purpose of RPNow, which is what we don't want. As you can clearly see here, once students make their way through the software and they reach the point where they need to input the password, there's a big green button that says Insert Exam Password. It's a rectangular button. And what they'll do, they'll press that button and then it'll pop up the generic dark circle characters. So what happens after that is that the students will press the button, dark circle characters appear, they'll continue, and they'll be able to access the exam. So the students won't actually see what the password is. So they can't say, oh, hey, the password's Aquafina 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll just pop up with the dark characters. And one more thing to note, this technically isn't a requirement, but I highly recommend that when you register an exam with the admin site, that each exam has their own unique password. The reason why I ask of this is because if you have 10 exams with the same password and a student happens to enter the wrong exam, since the passwords are the same, you could have a student take an exam that's a complete wrong one. If they're unique and a student enters the wrong password, that's actually a good thing in that case because it prevents them from taking the wrong exam. From that point, they will be prompted with a password is incorrect prompt. They'll be like, oh, I entered the wrong exam. Go back and enter the correct one. So that's just a few things to note on the password.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yep, you're very welcome. So,
quick question.
yes.
So at least in all my 3-4 weeks of experience with Moodle, when I've been giving out exams or something like that, I use a quiz environment and just lock down the time they can access it. And I don't have a password requirement for them to do it. It's just once the time sets, they're good to go. So is this an added layer on top of that, or is this instead of that?
Yeah, so basically, if you don't require a password, then students will be able to access the exam within the time you allowed. This is just validating that they went through the software. Basically, if you have an exam that's available, students can go into Moodle, and as long as they're within the time frame, they can access it and not even go through RPNow. This, having the password, it basically makes them go through RPNow because once they go through RPNow, they're prompted for a password, and they'll click the Insert Exam Password button, that'll enable them access. So yeah, the password is just, it basically makes them use the software, essentially.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, though, so they go through RPNow to get to Moodle. Is that right?
Yes, correct. They go through a user authentication process. They go through a few prompts. It takes about 5 minutes. And then after they authenticate their photo ID, they do a room scan and a user photo page. After they complete the process, which is all of 5 or 6 minutes, they're led directly to Moodle. They log in like any other day. They go to the exam, press the Insert Exam Password button, and then it prompts the dark circle characters, and then they're able to get into the exam. So they don't actually see what the password is, and they're able to access the exam, and you're validating that they're taking the exam through RPNow. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Gotcha. You're very welcome. So moving on to approximate duration of the exam. So this is just how long the software will be recorded for, and I politely ask that you add about an extra, I'd say about 5 minutes to allow students to go through the software. So just make it 65 minutes. So one thing to note that I always tell clients is that if a student is in an exam that's 65 minutes, they finish the exam in 30, the software will keep on recording until this timer runs out. So we just want to make sure that students, once they submit all their answers and they're completely done, that they close out of the software completely, because we obviously don't want to record students on a webcam or desktop after they complete the exam for obvious reasons. So that's just one thing to note about the duration.
Okay, so quick question there. So the duration starts as soon as they access RPNow?
Yeah, so duration starts. That's why I politely asked that you just add 5 minutes, because it takes about 5 minutes to enter to go through all the prompts. So yeah, you just basically compensate the difference. You just add an additional 5 minutes to it.
Okay.
Yep, no problem. So this question right here, does this exam require a proctor/invigilator? Just a fancy way of saying, is this a practice exam or a proctored exam? There's a few differences. So if you press no, it's a practice exam. So both practice exams and proctored exams will be recorded, but only the proctored exam records will be delivered, because those are the only ones that count for a grade. Also, one thing to note is that practice exams are free, and the reason why we have it this way is so we encourage faculty to provide practice exams to the students to get them properly acclimated to the software. And one other thing to note is that proctored exams will either cost the student or the school. I looked you guys up. You guys are student pay $10. So students will pay $10 per every proctored exam. So if you registered an exam as a practice one, you would just click this button, register, because doesn't require any end dates, and it doesn't count for a grade, so it's not being reviewed and delivered. But if you wanted to make it a proctored exam, you'll see a table and a few other more settings you'll have to input. So you press.
Quick question for you.
problem.
We typically do pass that on to the students. For the next month and a half, we would incur those costs. Is it problematic to switch that over to an institution payment process for 2 months?
No, no, not at all. I'll have to do, I'll speak with my sales manager, Mark Musacchio, and I'll just ping him, say, hey, Calvin College, they want to be in organization pay for 2 months. I'll let him know.
I just want to jump in here. So we could do that. I do want to add though that we had gotten special pricing for you guys until August 1st. So the $10 is until August 1st.
Great, thank you.
No problem. But we can switch it over to organization pay. That will be for all the exams though.
That's great. Just so you're aware, and Randy and Todd too, we're looking at incurring the cost as the institution for our spring semester, and then we would switch over to students incurring the cost for the summer semester.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. I'll go. Jennifer and I will take that offline with the sales manager. I'm sure you're already aware of Mark Musacchio, and we'll get that arranged for you. No problem at all.
Great, thanks.
You're very welcome. So going through it, once you select the button yes, you're indicating this will be a proctored exam. Number of students. Now this is just a general approximation. If you have 20 students, you'll put 20. 30, you'll put 30. You get the idea. So the reason why we put this in is that we want to give our reviewers a general gauge of how many exams they'll have to review. So whether or not they'll have to review an exam with 30 students or 300 students. So if you're a little bit off on this, no problem at all. It doesn't do anything bad. We just politely ask you try to be just as accurate as possible just for our reviewers' scheduling purposes. So moving on down to start and end dates. So we'll just make this very simple. These are the parameters that the exam is available, and we'll just give it a good 24 hours. So students will not be able to go through the software and see this exam. They'll be able to go through the software, but they won't be able to see this particular exam once it's registered before April 18th at midnight, and they won't be able to see it after April 19th at midnight. This is just the parameters that it's available in the software. One thing I would like to know is that if a student goes into the software at let's just say 11:50, and you have the end date as midnight, And the student answers 5 out of the 30 questions in 10 minutes, the software will not kick them out. So what you will have to do if you want the exam to auto-submit, which I'm sure you're already aware of that setting in Moodle, you'll have to put auto-submit at midnight. And what happens is that once the clock strikes midnight, in this case on April 19th, the answers will be extrapolated into Moodle. So one thing to note is that auto-submission is entirely done through your LMS, which in your case is Moodle, and RPNow will never kick a student out. So I just wanted to note that all auto-submission settings will have to be controlled through Moodle. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Gotcha, no problem. Just want to clarify that. So the final portion is the exam rule exceptions. So if you put
Okay, hold it. I just want to go
I'm sorry.
back to this real quick. So one of my concerns is if I give them 24 hours, if one student takes it early, if that person at the point that the exam is known, then he or she could email contact all his or her classmates and let them know what's on the exam. Right. So the hope would be that they would all take it at the same time as best as possible. But there have to be exceptions because of time zone issues and so forth. So is it the kind of thing where I could set an exam date, say, to cover a 2-hour period, and then make exceptions for individual students?
Yeah, so basically if you wanted, you can have the start and end dates be on the same day if you want. We have some clients that do that. So what happens is that you can make exceptions for students. Some students can take it early and some students can take it later. That will just need to be controlled through Moodle. So in this scenario, if you have the start and end dates that are between April 18th and April 19th, and you have one student that has a different end date or a different duration, what you'll have to do is you'll have to make that change in Moodle. So if all the students go through the exam through RPNow, only the student that has the exception will be able to access it past the end date if they have an exception, or they'll be given more time through the duration. So did you mean is your concern that if one student takes the exam at 1 a.m. and they just, they look at all the answers and they tell their friend who takes it 6 hours later at 7 a.m. what's on the exam? Was that your particular concern?
Right. So, but if I understand it correctly, basically, so RPNow is basically saying they can get into Moodle during the time frame you specified.
Yes.
Right. But they still have to go through Moodle. And so if inside Moodle, I basically say, well, in that 12-hour time period, you have exactly this 2-hour block. Then they can only actually get into the exam during that 2-hour block. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. At the start and end dates here, that's just the time period that they'll be able to go through the software and pick the exam. Once they've reached Moodle, their access is predicated upon the settings in Moodle. So Moodle essentially overrides it, sort of sense. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And anything that pertains to exceptions, auto submission, and access, that's completely controlled through Moodle. So nice that we clear that up. So the final section. I'm sorry, yeah. So the final section of this is the exam rule exception. So if you don't allow anything, easy enough, just click none. And if our reviewers see a student using anything at all, notes, pen and paper, they'll be flagged accordingly. So we'll just uncheck it. If you want to allow certain things, for example, Microsoft PowerPoint, a specific website, Excel, if you want to allow these things, you would check them off. So if our reviewers see them using Excel and the exam says Excel is allowed, they won't be flagged for it. Same with PowerPoint and everything else. So you get the idea. If you want something disallowed, you leave it blank. If you want to allow something, you'll check it off here. One thing I would like to note is that the only people that will see this exam rule exception section are 3 people: the administrator, the exam sponsor for this particular exam, and our reviewers. So students will not see this. So students will need to be notified via email or course announcement, or however they're notified on what's allowed in the exam. So if you want to allow Excel and Word, you would have to tell the students, however you basically disseminate information through email or a course announcement, that only Excel and Word are allowed, because they won't see this section. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So the final section I would like to cover are the text box right here. It says fill any exceptions not listed above and please be specific. So If you want to allow notes, and I'm not the strongest typer, so I'm just gonna, just verbally say this. So if you have a rule here that says students can use notes, but they're only allowed to use one side of an 8x12 paper, and they have to show both sides of the camera prior to taking the exam, our reviewers will see any rule you put in here and abide by it. So for example, if you put students can use a specific website, you would say, I guess I can type this out, pearson.com, just purely an example. You would type that out. Any rule that you want to specify, you would just have to put that right here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I can imagine for us, one of the rules we would have is that students can write on blank paper because some of the answers will not be submitted through Moodle, but submitted other ways because they have to write them by hand. So we could just say students are allowed to write answers on blank paper.
Correct. Yes, that makes sense. You just check off. You could say students can write answers on blank paper. And one thing to note, if you want to do that, we have other clients that say if students are allowed to write their answers on a piece of paper, we highly recommend you put here students have to show both sides of the paper. The reason why is because you don't want a student taking a lot of notes and then sitting down with the exam acting like they're writing things down and really they're violating the integrity of the exam. So if you want students to use notes, to be able to use scrap paper, I highly recommend that you put a rule. Students must show both sides of their scrap paper before the exam to validate that it's blank, that they're not walking in with 2 sheets of notes. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So what I'll do here in this case, I'll register the exam. I got the exam sponsor. It's a proctored exam. And once you click register, you'll get a notice up here, exam successfully registered. So I'm just going to take you through the settings here. Exam registration, exam manager. So yeah, you'll see the exams that are inside this, all the settings here. You'll see the name of it. Exam code is not applicable to you, so you don't have to worry about that. You'll see the teacher's first name and last name, the exam that I just created. One thing to note is that if you start and end dates that are blank, that means the exam is a practice exam because start and end dates do not require practice exams do not require start and end dates. So that's why those are blank. It'll show the number of students, whether it's active, and if you want to view the details, you'll click this blue button. So you'll be able to see everything that you use to register the exam with. And if you had to make a change, we highly recommend that you make all changes before the actual exam. So if you had to adjust the end date, you just update the exam. And you would just refresh the page. And look, the change took. It went from midnight to 1 a.m. One thing over here, this is only an administrative setting, but if you want to assign an exam sponsor, you can do that here. You could take the exam and select a different exam sponsor if you would like to. You can grant access, you can remove access, and please note this is just a administrator setting. So that's just one thing I wanted to note. So pretty much right here, do you guys have any questions in regards with managing the settings? It's pretty straightforward. Once you register an exam, you'll be able to go in and view the name, the exam sponsor's first and last name, start and end dates, students, and all the settings, and make any changes if needed. Did you have any questions before I go into records and reporting?
Quick question about calculators.
Yes.
One of the options was that they can use a calculator. Does that mean they can use like a physical calculator, or does that mean your software turns on a calculator on the computer that they may use?
So you'll have to specify that. If you allow a calculator, you'll have to put inside the text box, students can use a calculator, but only a physical calculator or only a software calculator. And if they use a calculator that's not allowed, they'll be flagged accordingly.
All right.
Great. So once you go through the registering an exam and managing the settings, we're going to get into records now. So an exam. So you go to reviewer and review exams right here. So what you can do, you can view exam records. Let's see if there's any here. These are just our internal people. So you'll be able to see the students' records for all exams, and you'll be able to see the exams right here. As you can see, there's various ways you can filter it. You can filter by the instructor's username, email, first and last name, by the student, by the exam name. Again, exam code does not apply to you, so you won't have to worry about that. The exam record start and end date. So there's various different ways to filter. So what I'm going to show you now is the report. So after a proctored exam is taken, after the end date expires, we have 5 business days to send over the report to you. So I'm just going to show you a demo. So the report, there's 2 ways it goes. It goes to the exam sponsor and the administrator in an email. You'll be sent an email. It'll say software secure, like a generic automatic email, please view your exam report here. I don't remember the exact verbiage off the top of my head, but it'll include this link. And you can also go through here, just go to your admin site account, search for exams, and click this blue summary button just to pop it up. And so for this organization, because it's internal, it's suspicious only, you guys just show everything for the report. So you'll be able to see all the records that are clean, that are a rules violation, and that are suspicious. And just a very quick overview, clean means the student took the exam, they didn't break any rules, everything went well. A rules violation means a student broke a rule, but it didn't pertain to the integrity of the exam. An example would be they took an exam, but they had the Channel 7 news playing in the background. That has no impact on the exam, so it would just be a rules violation. Another one would be if a small child entered the room and just asked, "Hey, Mom, what's for dinner?" That is a rule violation because, a student interacted with somebody else. But if it's just somebody asking for dinner, that doesn't have any impact on the integrity of the exam. So 2 things to note with rules violations is that if one is committed, a student will be sent an email just saying, "Hey, you committed this rules violation, just don't do it again." And, it's not, you didn't violate the integrity of the exam, you just broke a rule. And also, once they go through the software for their next exam, it will pop up a message that says, "The last time you took an exam, you broke this rule. Same thing, just don't do it again." These 2 methods are just our way of behavior modification from preventing a student from making the same mistake twice and subsequent ones for future exams. So suspicious, as you can presume, this is when our reviewers feel that a student committed a violation that impacted the exam. This could be using a cell phone when they're not supposed to. Well, cell phones are never allowed. They could be using notes when they're not allowed. They could have somebody coaching them throughout the exam. You get the idea when we feel that the integrity of the exam is violated. So if this happens, the student is not notified. Only the exam sponsor, the administrator are. And just to be clear, the way that you handle it from that point is completely up to you. We only report the violations. The way you handle it with, yourself, administrator, and academic integrity is entirely up to you. We just report it, and we're pretty much done at that point. We kind of hand the baton off to you, so to speak, and you handle it however you like. Did either one of you had any questions in regards with reporting?
No, not me.
Cool. So I'll just. I'm sorry. Yes.
Can the faculty members actually see these spots of the video that have been flagged?
Oh, yeah, you just read my mind. I was about to take you through a video right now. So our buddy Mark Musacchio is our sales manager. I'm going to see if this video is available.
A cheat, apparently.
So I'm just going to quickly allow this. Yeah, you'll be able to go through and you'll be able to see where all the violations occur. Just give me one moment here. I'm just trying to go into Adobe Flash. And all admin site videos will need to be viewed in either Internet Explorer or Firefox ESR, which I'm on right now, but I'm going to quickly switch over to Internet Explorer to see if we can.
That record may have been deleted.
Possibly, yeah. So I'll just double check.
While you're looking, I do remember the emails being sent, and it's great to see a lot of green there. But it was fairly easy just to jump into the red and see exactly where the violation was.
So you've used this, Rob, for other classes?
Yeah, in fact, as Brian was logging in here, I went into the system admin panel. We've been using this since 2014 for Nancy Meyer's kinesiology or medical terminology course. And then we've used it for a couple other summer courses.
So these aren't reviewed, so give me 1 minute. I'm trying to pull up a video, just a true example of this.
You might be able to pull one out of SI Canvas, SSI Moodle, one of those orgs.
Can you all see my screen right here? This is Internet Explorer. Can you guys all see this page?
No.
I see gray.
Okay.
You have to click the button and choose screen 1.
Oh, yep. I'm just gonna stop sharing here and reshare right here. Can you all see my screen now?
No.
It's trying to share right now.
Yeah.
There it is.
See it.
So basically, the video is actually gone in this, but to answer your question, yes. So the way it works is this. So you go into comments, and you can view the desktop and the web camera. You can flip through them. You can't see that now because this video just isn't appear to be there. You can see this violation, browse on other websites, and it shows the time, and it shows what it is. So browse on other websites is suspicious. Rules violation, reference materials. So it'll explicitly state what the violation was, if it's suspicious or a rules violation, and the time that it occurred. So obviously you don't want to watch a 3-hour exam for only 10 seconds. You need to validate that a student broke the integrity of the exam. So does that answer you guys' question? You can easily just toggle to the exact points to gather the information you need in any academic integrity investigation. Does that make sense?
Yep. Did you say you can see their desktop as well?
Oh, yep, web camera and desktop. The web camera that shows this physical student inside the room, and the desktop shows everything that's going on the computer. You both sides. You'll just have to flip through them here and alternate.
Okay, so it's not a lockdown browser then, but it does shows us what's on their screen.
Yeah, it shows everything that's on the screen that's allowed. Yeah, so if you see a student that's using Excel when they're not supposed to, they'll be reported on as well. And, yes, won't be getting away with anything, so to speak.
Okay, so if we had it where they weren't allowed to use anything, then it would be a lockdown browser.
Yeah, that would be the student. If they're caught using something, they'll be flagged for it. So basically, the way it works, if you put nothing's allowed and students are caught using something, we have an internal blacklist we use. Certain programs are blocked by default, but I'd have to go through your organization. If a student's using a program that's default allowed, that our software allows, that your exam doesn't, they'll be marked as suspicious for it if it rises to that level. Does that make sense?
It's
Okay,
a
I'm gonna
partial
have to drop
lockdown
out
browser.
because I have a class.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Have fun, Todd.
Sorry, it's a partial lockdown browser. So a lot of programs are blocked. I feel like for you guys, it's probably just Microsoft Word programs and websites that are allowed. That's just in case you need to allow those for students, but unless it's specified in the exam rules, if our reviewers see it, they're going to flag it.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Perfect. So basically, just a quick overview. I showed you guys administrator settings, how to add accounts, bulk import users if you would like, how to register exams. I went through the exam settings, records and reporting, basically how we report on exams and actual. I apologize, I don't have the actual video, but you gather the idea. When you view a video, you'll be able to go through all the violations and it shows the times. Did any one of you guys have any other questions before we sign off here?
No, I think that's good. I think we could stop the recording, and I've just got a couple other follow-up questions if that's possible.
Perfect. Yes. Jennifer, could you please just stop the recording?